Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we drop straight into a time, before Wi-Fi, before pizza rolls, before deodorant. You're standing in Argos, a sun-bleached city carved from legend, where marble glows like bone and the air smells of olive brine and dusty ambition. Tonight, we'll slink behind bronze doors, brush shoulders with scheming kings, and glance nervously at thunderclouds swirling above Olympus. And if you've ever thought your dad had control issues, well, wait till you meet King Acrisius. You're probably not going to survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across Argos's outer hills, where thistles scrape your ankles and cicadas whisper ancient secrets. Down the slope lies the palace, its limestone facade glaring in the midday sun. But it's not the palace that draws your gaze, it's the weird tower behind it. There's something off about it. It gleams unnaturally, every seam sealed tight, not a single window. Like a tomb designed for someone alive. Inside that polished bronze prison is a young woman named Danaë. Her skin is pale from months without sunlight. Her golden hair lies limp over a robe that once might have shimmered. Now it just sags. She paces, steps counted in maddening repetition, voice cracked from calling out to no one. So what's she doing in there? Her father, King Acrisius, wasn't exactly winning any Parent of the Year awards. According to myth, he consulted the Oracle of Delphi. Bad move number 1. The Oracle told him, "You'll never have a son, but your daughter's son? He'll kill you." That's not the kind of prophecy you forget over brunch. Naturally, Acrisius panicked. He couldn't kill his own daughter. Gods frown on that sort of thing, but he could try to cheat fate. So he locked Danaë in a tower made of bronze. No windows, no doors, no boyfriends. No fun. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant as a moral tale about hubris or simply a poetic explanation for an ancient rite of seclusion. Either way, poor Danaë was living in a golden cage that glowed by daylight and echoed with her loneliness by night. Now, from your bird's eye view, don't ask how you're floating. Just go with it. You hover over Danaë's head as she lies on the stone floor, sketching invisible pictures into the dust. Her eyes are dreamy, far off, not broken yet. You wonder what she's dreaming about. The ocean? Freedom? Maybe just a decent meal that isn't stale bread and regrets. Outside the tower, Argos carries on like nothing's wrong. Women fetch water, men bargain over fish, and children shriek as they chase each other with olive branches. They don't talk about the girl in the tower anymore. Maybe they never did. And up above, somewhere between the clouds and the chaos of mortal lives, sits Zeus, king of the gods, father of thunder, serial dater. He's watching. Don't ask how. You'll get a migraine. But somehow, he sees Danaë, locked in her gleaming tomb, and, well, Zeus is Zeus. He's intrigued, and where there's curiosity, there's usually mischief brewing in Olympus. You've probably heard of Zeus's greatest hits: swan, bull, eagle, banana smoothie. Okay, not that one. But this time, he gets a little more abstract. As night falls over Argos, the sky flickers with stars and a hush settles. A breeze moves through the city, but it doesn't touch the tower. Inside, Danaë sleeps. And above, a shimmer begins, something golden, pulsing, fluid, wrong. The gods don't always follow logic. Sometimes they just follow vibes. And this vibe? It's about to rewrite everything. By the way, side note, scholars love to argue whether the golden shower was meant literally, as in, magic glitter falling from the ceiling, or metaphorically, representing divine light or male fertility. Yeah. We're keeping this PG-13. Either way, the image is burned into mythology. Zeus doesn't knock on the bronze door. He just reigns. And you, Yes, you. You float there, jaw slightly open, watching gold seep into the cracks of fate. The air hums with strange electricity, like the charge before a lightning strike or the tension when your browser freezes mid-rainy Facebook post. And inside that tower, Danaë's world shifts. The gods don't do subtle. When they arrive, they change destinies. Section 2. You blink, but the glow doesn't fade. It pours in slow, syrupy ribbons through a hole that wasn't there a moment ago, an opening high in the ceiling, shaped like a teardrop or maybe an eye that's finally opened. The golden light pulses, warm, thick, and humming with something older than time. It doesn't just illuminate Danaë's cell, it transforms it. The cold bronze glistens like honeyed amber, and her pale skin flushes with sudden warmth. For a moment, she doesn't even stir. Then, her breath catches. Zeus doesn't appear with fanfare or lightning bolts this time. No animal disguises, no stolen robes, no Greek drama. Just gold. Radiant, insistent, divine gold. You try to look away, but the magic pulls at your vision like a current. This isn't some innocent glow. It's conscious, curious, hungry. Danaë, half asleep, opens her eyes. The light touches her cheeks, and she doesn't scream. Maybe she senses what it is, or maybe she's too tired to be afraid. Her gaze softens. Her hands reach up, and in that moment, the myths say, Zeus passes through bronze and breath and bone. No key, no consent forms. Just the gods doing what gods do, rewrite rules. Historians still argue whether this moment was interpreted literally by ancient Greeks or symbolically, a metaphor for divine inspiration, or even a dramatized tale of divine right. But in the version most retold, Danaë becomes pregnant. By dawn, the light is gone. The hole in the ceiling has vanished. She sits, stunned, on the stone floor, a hand resting gently on her stomach. No one's entered the tower. No one's knocked. But everything has changed. Cut to King Acrisius, probably having his fourth sleepless night in a row, plagued by worry, paranoia, and indigestion. He doesn't know it yet, but the prophecy is back on schedule. News travels strangely in Argos. A rustle through the halls. A suspicious serving woman. A tunic that no longer fits quite right. Eventually, someone tells the king, "Your daughter is with child." He rushes to the tower, his face a storm cloud. Bursting through the door, which he opens only with a guarded key, he finds Danaë curled against the far wall, stomach gently rounded. "What have you done?" he demands, though he knows the room has no windows, no visitors, no escape. Danaë looks up slowly. Her voice is soft, but steady. "The god came to me," she says. You'd think that would scare him into silence, but no. Acrisius doubles down. He's not comforted by the divine paternity. He's terrified. Because if Danaë's son is born, then he, Acrisius, dies. And kings don't love prophecies. Fringe detail? Some versions of the story say Acrisius actually saw Zeus enter the tower as golden ring. Others suggest he denied the story, blaming Danaë's guards or suspecting madness. One wild theory, that Danaë faked the divine encounter to hide a secret lover. Zeus gets all the credit, but maybe a mortal snuck in after all. You'll never know. The myths don't agree, and neither do scholars. But what happens next is clear. Danaë gives birth. And it's not a monster or a mark of divine shame. It's a boy, glowing with life, crying with strength. She names him Perseus. Yes, that Perseus. The guy who will one day slice off Medusa's head and fly home on a winged horse. But right now, he's just a wrinkly god baby wrapped in cloth and destiny. You crouch in the shadows of the tower and watch Danaë hold her son. Her eyes are wide, still stunned by how fast everything's changed. She sings softly, ancient lullabies from her girlhood, voice wavering like a reed in wind. Acrisius, meanwhile, is sweating bullets. He doesn't trust the gods. He doesn't trust fate. And most of all, he doesn't trust his own bloodline anymore. What's a king to do? Naturally, he goes full Greek tragedy. He builds a wooden chest, big enough for a woman and baby, watertight and sealed, and he tosses it into the sea. Pause here for a second. The Aegean Sea is not your friend. It's capricious, full of rocks, storms, sea monsters, and mythological mood swings. Imagine sailing across it in a box, armed with nothing but hope and breast milk. And yet, that's exactly what Danaë and Perseus do. The sun scorches. The waves slap the chest like an angry god. And you? You hover beside it, feeling the spray of salt and the creak of damp wood. Danaë whispers to her son through the cracks. She tells him stories of gods and gardens, of songs sung in marble halls. She doesn't cry, at least not where he can see. Miraculously, the chest doesn't sink. It drifts. For days. Weeks? Who knows? Time feels soft here. The tides move like dream logic. Eventually, the wooden chest bumps gently onto a foreign shore. Islanders gather. Fishermen drop their nets. And from the chest, under morning sun, steps Danaë, pale, weary, but alive. In her arms, a boy with bright eyes and a birthright heavier than gold. This island is called Seriphos, and for a while, it becomes home. Section 3. The island smells like salt and fig trees, with a hint of goatskin and old fish. You step out onto the beach beside Danaë, your feet sinking slightly into the damp sand. The sun here is kind, not blinding. The breeze brings whispers, not of gods this time, but of human chatter. Seriphos isn't a place of palaces. It's modest, sleepy. A few stone huts, some terraced farms clinging to the hillsides like they might tumble into the sea at any moment. The people stare at Danaë and the boy like an omen has just washed ashore. And in a way it has. Enter Dictys, the first man Danaë sees, and the first to offer something that has been sorely lacking, kindness. A fisherman by trade, and brother to the island's ruler, Dictys helps them from the chest with calloused hands and soft eyes. No questions about gold or prophecy. He simply gives them a place to rest. They stay in his small home, a lean-to with a thatched roof and more holes than windows. But it's safe. It's quiet. Perseus learns to crawl on reed mats and chase goats. Danaë breathes easier for the first time in months. You linger beside her as she washes clothes in the stream, humming old songs and watching the clouds drift. Historians still argue whether Dictys truly existed or was just a narrative placeholder, a symbol of good-hearted common folk, the kind the gods rarely reward. But in every telling, Dictys matters. He becomes a second father to Perseus, a reminder that heroism isn't always grand. Sometimes it's just lending your boat to a stranger. Now, of course, Seriphos isn't entirely idyllic. Every small island has its ruler, and here it's King Polydectes, a man whose name sounds like an infection and whose morals match. He's charming in the oily way that fish scales are shiny. And he notices Danaë. You're there when he first spots her in the village square. She's buying barley, baby Perseus on her hip, hair tied up with a strip of old sailcloth. Polydectes watches too long, smiles too wide. And you know this man thinks everything on the island belongs to him, including people. Danaë avoids him. At first. Years pass. Perseus grows strong, wild like the sea. He wrestles older boys, races the wind, climbs rocks until his mother shrieks. Dictys teaches him to fish and to throw nets, but you can see it. There's something in Perseus that won't be contained by islands or humble lives. Polydectes, meanwhile, watches. He bides his time like mold in a cellar. When Perseus is a teenager, sharp-eyed and full of fire, the king makes his move. He announces a feast, a massive one. Everyone is invited, including Danaë and Perseus. The pretense? He's getting married. To someone else. Which is suspicious. But hey, it's a party. Now here's a historical detail to chew on. In ancient Greece, gift-giving was currency. Social, political, emotional. You couldn't show up to a feast empty-handed. It was shameful. So when Polydectes demands that every guest bring a horse as a wedding gift, it's a trap. He knows Perseus has no horse, no land, no gold, just fists and pride. Perseus, burning with shame and trying to protect his mother's honor, blurts out, "If I can't bring a horse, I'll bring you something better. I'll bring you the head of Medusa." Silence. Even the seagulls pause mid-squawk. You can feel the weight of the words. Danaë gasps. Dictys covers his face. And Polydectes? He smiles like a catfish who just saw bait walk into its own mouth. Fringe scholars have suggested that Polydectes may not have believed Perseus would actually try, that the challenge was just a public shaming device. Others say he did believe it and counted on Perseus dying in the process. Either way, the result is the same. The next morning, Perseus stands at the edge of the shore, facing the east wind. He's got nothing but a rough cloak and burning determination. You stand beside him, feeling the sand whirl around your ankles. Danaë tries to stop him. She pleads, begs, but he shakes his head. "If I don't return," he says, "at least you'll be free." That's how you know he's her son. He kisses her forehead, grips Dictys' hand, and steps into a world he doesn't understand, chasing a myth that could kill him before breakfast. But here's where the gods get chatty again. You hear the flutter of wings before you see anything. Then, whoosh, Hermes appears, looking like a travel blogger with attitude. Winged sandals, casual smirk, and a bag full of questionable gifts. "Off to kill a Gorgon," he says. "You'll need some help." Behind him stands Athena, calm and unreadable. She doesn't smile, doesn't blink, but she raises her hand, and something gleams. A polished bronze shield, so reflective it's nearly a mirror. You know what this means. This isn't just a hero's quest. It's a divine appointment. Zeus may have vanished after that golden shimmer, but now his siblings are stepping in. And when the gods take sides, things get weird fast. Perseus, to his credit, doesn't panic. He accepts the gifts. The winged sandals, the curved sword, the mirrored shield, and the cryptic instructions. "You'll need to find the Gree," Athena says. They know where Medusa hides. "The Gree?" he asks. Hermes grins. "Three old hags who share one eye and one tooth." You blink. "Seriously?" Perseus mutters. "Oh yeah," Hermes nods. "You'll love them. You're already packing mental snacks. This isn't going to be your average hike." Section 4. You step off the beaten path, following Perseus and his unusual guides as they head into a tangled forest where the light seems too dim for the day. The air smells damp and wild, like earth after a storm, mixed with the faint, musky scent of something ancient, something that doesn't want to be found. The Gree. Three crones sharing one eye and one tooth between them. You can almost hear the grinding of that single eye moving between sockets, the chatter of gnashing teeth. And when you finally meet them, you realize the stories don't exaggerate. They look like a knitting project gone horribly wrong. Twisted, gnarled, their skin draped tight over bones like leather stretched over an old drum. They don't speak your language, but their words feel like brittle leaves snapping in the wind. They bicker over who holds the eye, passing it between them like a hot potato. You imagine it's a pain, but it's also their power. This odd shared vision means you only get half the story at a time, and even that's cloudy. Perseus doesn't waste time. He waits for the right moment. Then, like a kid snatching candy, grabs the eye and holds it fast. The crones wail in protest, but you see the flicker of fear, or maybe respect. Suddenly, they have to bargain. Historians still argue whether the Gree were real mythic creatures or symbolic representations of aging and the passing of wisdom. Some say they were metaphors for shared knowledge and the importance of collaboration, which is ironic, because Perseus is about to do the exact opposite. From them, Perseus extracts the crucial information. Medusa's lair lies beyond the dark cliffs, guarded by shadows and curses, a place where no mortal has survived. The Gree's shared tooth rattles ominously as they warn him, or maybe just curse him. with riddles about fate and doom. With their knowledge and Hermes' winged sandals, Perseus sets off. The path twists through rocky terrain, the wind biting sharper, carrying whispers that make your skin crawl. You glance behind you. The Gree are nowhere to be seen, their single eye still gleaming in the underbrush, watching. Quirky detail. According to some obscure sources, the Gree were thought to represent the three phases of womanhood: maiden, mother, crone, all rolled into one, with their shared eye symbolizing a collective vision beyond time. A poetic touch to a rather grotesque tale. As Perseus approaches Medusa's domain, you can almost hear the faint hissing of serpents beneath the stones, the rustle of scales, and the sharp intake of breath that sounds like a warning from the gods themselves. The stakes couldn't be higher. Perseus is no longer just a boy running from a cruel king. He's a man stepping into legend, chased by the shadow of Zeus' golden descent and the weight of Olympus on his shoulders. You tighten your grip on the rough cloak slung around you, ready for what's next, but also aware that once you cross this threshold, there's no turning back. Section 5. You follow Perseus as he inches closer to Medusa's lair, a sinister cave carved deep into the jagged cliffs. The air here is thick with salt and something sour, the unmistakable scent of decay, like forgotten dreams and lost hopes swirling in the ocean breeze. The sky dims, as if even the sun dares not look down on this cursed place. Before you step inside, Perseus pulls on the polished bronze shield gifted by Athena. It's not just armor. It's a mirror, a gleaming surface to avoid the deadly gaze of Medusa herself. You wonder if this shiny shield is really the difference between life and an eternal stone statue. The myths say Medusa wasn't always a monster. Once, she was a beautiful priestess, her hair flowing like golden rivers. But after a tragic encounter with Poseidon in Athena's temple, a sacrilege, she was cursed to become the snake-haired Gorgon, her gaze turning men to stone. Historians still argue whether Medusa's story was a metaphor for female rage or punishment. Maybe she was a victim, or maybe she was always a monster hiding beneath the beauty. You notice the eerie silence around the cave, broken only by the faint drip of water and the rustling of scales. As Perseus creeps forward, the floor glistens with shards of stone, victims frozen mid-step, eyes wide in eternal terror. The sight chills you, yet fascinates you like an ancient museum of nightmares. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some lesser-known versions, Medusa's snakes were said to hiss insults at intruders, a kind of poisonous commentary, really. Imagine your worst internet trolls, but in snake form, whispering venomous critiques as you try to sneak past. Perseus grips his sword tight, every muscle taut. You can almost hear the steady thump of his heart echoing in your ears, a rhythmic reminder that this moment balances on a razor's edge. The path to legend is paved with such tense beats. You think back to the winged sandals still strapped to his feet, a godly gift that makes him swift as the sea breeze. Speed will be key because once Medusa senses movement, the game changes. No one has ever outrun her deadly gaze before. The shadows dance on the cave walls, casting monstrous shapes that flicker like ancient warnings. Perseus raises his shield, ready to use its reflective power, and you hold your breath. History is about to be made or broken. The cave mouth seems to breathe, inhaling the approaching hero and exhaling whispers of doom. You can almost feel the weight of all who tried and failed, their stony visages like ghosts urging you to flee. But you don't. You're part of this. The story wraps around you like a cloak, thick and strange, drawing you into a myth that's more than legend. It's a living, breathing suspense. Section 6. You ease forward, still shadowing Perseus, as he takes another cautious step into the cavern. The air grows colder, the kind of cold that seeps past your skin and into your bones, a chill that seems to whisper, "Turn back." But there's no turning back now. The flickering torchlight casts a trembling halo around Perseus's head, and every crevice of the cave feels like it might spring to life. The silence is no longer quiet. It's loaded. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, swelling with unspoken warnings. Somewhere ahead, unseen but undoubtedly aware, Medusa waits. Perseus moves like a cat stalking prey, except he's the one being hunted, or at least, that's how it feels. The polished shield, held at an angle, becomes his guide. You watch his gaze stay locked on the mirror, not the path ahead, reading the reflection like a riddle written in rippling silver. And then, movement. Not a scream, not a hiss, just the whisper of scales brushing stone. You freeze. Perseus freezes. You both breathe in unison, so shallow it hardly counts. When Medusa first comes into view in the reflection, it's not how you imagined. There's a worn sorrow in her monstrous form, something human still lingering behind the serpent crown and those cursed eyes. But it only lasts a moment. Then her gaze, even in reflection, seems to shiver the air itself. You notice something strange. Perseus smiles, just barely. And that's when you realize he's been rehearsing this moment his whole life. His grip tightens around the sickle sword, a blade sharp enough to cut through fate itself. And then, lightning fast, he moves. The moment is a blur. A scream you don't hear but feel. A flash of steel. A final, wet thud. Silence returns like a crashing wave, pulling everything away. Perseus stands frozen, his chest heaving. In his hands, the severed head of Medusa dangles, her eyes still glowing faintly. Even dead, they hold danger. He slips it into a satchel enchanted to contain its power, cinching it shut with trembling fingers. A mainstream historical fact? Greek warriors often believed in sacred relics and protective tokens. Perseus's use of divine tools, sword, mirror, sandals, shows just how much myth and belief were tools of survival as much as strategy. But here's a quirky detail you might not know. In one weird version of the myth, when Medusa is slain, two beings spring from her neck: Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant with a golden sword. Talk about dramatic exits. Historians still argue whether this scene was ever intended as literal or symbolic. Was Perseus slaying chaos? Or the monstrous feminine? Was it about bravery or divine favoritism? You don't have time to untangle the metaphors. Perseus is already moving, already turning away from the carnage. The walls of the cave seem to sigh as if relieved. You glance back one last time, expecting a twitch, a flicker, but there's only stillness. Even monsters, it seems, have an end. Back outside, the light stuns your eyes. The sea breeze, once cold, now feels like a balm. Perseus doesn't speak. He just stands there, bloodied, victorious, and perhaps a little empty. You wonder how it feels to kill something that was once beautiful. To carry a head that turns the living to stone, a power he now owns. That satchel swings against his hip with quiet menace. There's no music playing, no gods clapping from Olympus. Just the surf and the seagulls, and a very tired demigod walking into legend. Section 7. You follow Perseus as he descends from the cliffs of Gorgon's Isle, each step carrying the quiet gravity of what's just happened. His sandals, gifted by Hermes, make no sound on the rock. That's either divine design, or the eerie hush that follows when something ancient dies. The satchel swings again, heavier now with Medusa's head inside. You know it's wrapped, sealed by Athena's magic, but even so, it's like you can hear it whispering through the leather, "Look at me." You don't. Perseus reaches the beach, and you half expect a crowd of cheering mortals, or at least a fanfare of conch shells. But nope, the sea greets him with indifference. Just waves, lapping and relentless, as if nothing's changed. Because to the ocean, maybe nothing has. Just another mortal with a borrowed blade and borrowed courage. He finds the raft he left hidden behind some rocks. A few slats of enchanted cedar, blessed by Poseidon to ride, even the most furious tides. The kind of DIY project only Greek heroes get to pull off. The sun is sliding west now, dragging long shadows across the water. And as Perseus sets sail, the silence that clung to the island seems to snap. Gulls cry again, wind whistles through rigging, and somewhere behind you, a stone statue crumbles. Medusa's final victim, maybe. Or maybe the island is shedding its skin. Now, here's your mainstream fact for the night. In many Greek myths, time bends around heroes. They return from quests thinking a few days have passed, only to find whole generations gone. That kind of warps your perception of homecoming. Like, do you go back for your mom or your mortgage? And speaking of timelines, here comes a quirky one. Some fringe scholars claim Perseus didn't even exist as a person, but as a constellation first. Yep, Perseus was in the stars long before Homer started scribbling. The myth may have been made to explain the shape of the night sky. So next time you see a sword-shaped sparkle overhead, wave hello. Still, historians still argue whether the tale of Medusa was originally a warning, a rite of passage parable, or a misremembered version of real ancient rituals. One theory: Medusa might represent an older goddess religion suppressed by emerging patriarchal powers. Snakes, after all, were symbols of feminine wisdom long before they became hair accessories. Perseus doesn't ponder any of this. He sails. You sit beside him, the wind tugging gently at your clothes, and watch the sea roll out like a carpet of shifting blue. There's something different in him now. It's not arrogance, it's weight. As if carrying a Gorgon's head also means carrying the idea that you'll never be just a man again. People will tell stories about you. They'll paint you on vases. You'll become simplified. And that's the real curse, isn't it? You glance at the horizon. A storm's building, low and smoky. Probably symbolic. You've read enough mythology to know this can't be easy sailing all the way back to the palace. Which palace? Oh, right, King Polydectes. The reason Perseus even went monster hunting in the first place. Let's rewind briefly. Remember when Perseus promised to bring back Medusa's head just to shut up a boastful king? That's who he's returning to now. Only problem? The king doesn't expect him to succeed. That's the kind of man who throws daggers with smiles and hosts parties that feel like traps. You're not sure what Perseus plans to do with Medusa's head once he gets there. But something tells you it won't stay inside the satchel for long. The raft rides the tide like it knows where to go. Overhead, clouds form twisted shapes you try not to interpret too literally. Is that Zeus? Or just a smug poodle? As night falls, Perseus lights a small brazier on the raft. The flame dances in the breeze, casting gold across his features. He doesn't sleep. Neither do you. Maybe it's the rocking. Maybe it's the faint hissing sound from the satchel. Or maybe it's the slow realization that even victorious heroes are never really done. The stars blink awake, and sure enough, there's a cluster shaped like a warrior, sword raised, locked in battle forever. And just above it, a writhing cluster of snakes. You wonder if they'll ever name one after you. Section 8. Dawn creeps up like a spy, all peach-colored light, and long yawns across the sea. You and Perseus reach the edge of the island chain just as the sun pokes its head over the horizon. The air smells different here, more salt, more something metallic, like the scent of gods watching from their private balconies. The raft slides ashore onto the pebbled beach of Seriphos, and here's your first reminder. This isn't a warm homecoming. This is a reckoning. King Polydectes, you recall, had a nasty habit of smiling through his teeth. The kind of guy who throws feasts in your honor while planning your downfall with the fish course. He sent Perseus off to die, heroic death preferred, messy and public. So imagine his face when Perseus strolls back into town, a little older, a lot grittier, and carrying a head in a God-blessed purse. Now, let's not skip ahead. First, Perseus visits his mother. Danaë's been holed up like Rapunzel without the hair. Polydectes wanted her, and when she refused, he tried a classic ancient Greek move. Imprison the lady and gaslight her son. But now her boy's back, and he didn't come empty-handed. You follow Perseus through the town square. Fishermen stop gutting their catch. Women carrying amphorae freeze mid-step. It's not every day a demigod returns, sandals still dripping sea foam, looking like something from a fresher myth. He knocks on the palace gates. No one answers. Instead, you hear laughter inside, loud, performative, like a villain who's been rehearsing this scene for days. Perseus doesn't wait. He pushes through the doors, and there's Polydectes, lounging on a throne that looks borrowed from someone richer. "Did you forget something?" the king asks, all charm and contempt. And Perseus just smiles. He reaches into the satchel, and for one split second, everything goes quiet. You can't even hear your own breath. Then he pulls out Medusa's head, eyes closed, snakes hissing faintly, the expression frozen in a kind of eternal, bitter surprise. Polydectes barely has time to scream. His face twists, contorts, and then solidifies into a grotesque mask. Stone. Mid-taunt. Instant karma, courtesy of divine optics. You feel bad for a heartbeat. Then you remember he locked Danaë in a tower and exiled Perseus for sport. So maybe not. And here's your mainstream fact drop. The myth of Perseus slaying Polydectes with Medusa's head is one of the earliest stories where a magical item is returned and reused, kind of like a mythical library loan. This was the ancient Greek version of sustainable weaponry. Athena must have had a spreadsheet somewhere. And your quirky tidbit? Some old versions of the myth say Perseus didn't even mean to turn the king to stone. He just opened the bag at the wrong moment during a party. Like pulling out your phone flashlight and accidentally summoning death. Classic demigod clumsiness. But historians still argue whether the Medusa myth was truly meant to punish male hubris or to illustrate the perils of divine interference. Is it a story about women's rage being weaponized by men? Or a cosmic warning to not poke too hard at fate's underside? You'll find university professors still yelling about this in office hours. Back in the palace, silence falls. Danaë steps out from behind a column. Her eyes meet her son's, and you see the years of fear drain from her all at once. No words, just a nod. The kind that says, "You came back. You didn't die? I never let myself hope too much, but here you are." Perseus sets Medusa's head down on a pedestal, a centerpiece no one's going to move, and the room exhales. Literally. The stone statues that were once guards and courtiers crack, crumble, and collapse into dusty piles. Not revived, just released. Outside, the people of Seriphos gather. Word travels faster than Hermes on a deadline. Some cheer. Others kneel. A few just blink, unsure how to process the fact that the king is now decorative landscaping. Perseus doesn't linger. He hands the head back to Athena's waiting owl. Yep, they have delivery service now. And just like that, the satchel is light again. Mission complete. But the road doesn't end here. You walk beside him as he makes his way toward the harbor. Behind him, Seriphos starts murmuring about building statues and renaming streets. In front of him, a whole different path unfurls. One paved with more battles, more legends, and eventually, a girl in a sea cave. Remember Andromeda? No, you're about to. The sea breeze picks up, rustling Perseus' tunic, brushing against your face like the breath of fate itself. There's something about the way he walks now, shoulders relaxed, eyes scanning the horizon. He's not just returning, he's evolving. And yeah, you're still here, tucked into the back seat of a myth that's far from over. Section 9. You're still dusting the stone flakes off your sandals when Perseus sets his gaze on the horizon again. The island of Seriphos is behind you now. Its politics, its curses, its statues that used to talk. But don't get too comfy. The gods never let a hero retire early, especially one who's proven he can juggle cursed heads and court drama without losing his cool. So when Poseidon, god of waves and salt-fueled grudges, stirs the tides beneath your raft, you know it's not just to make the ride choppy. It's a divine nudge. And sure enough, Within a day's sail, you spot something on the coast up ahead. At first it looks like a mistake, a trick of light, maybe some wind-warped driftwood lashed to the rocks. But no, as the raft glides closer, you see her. A girl. No, a woman, barely, chained to the cliff by her wrists, hair whipping in the wind, skin glowing like moonlight on milk. She's not crying, not pleading, just waiting, like she already knows the ocean's not done with her yet. This is Andromeda. And this, brace yourself, is the moment most Greek myths pretend is a meet cute, even though it's really more like The Bachelor, sacrificial edition. Andromeda's not tied up for fashion. She's bait, literal bait. Her parents, King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia, offended the sea gods by bragging that she was more beautiful than the Nereids, Poseidon's sea nymph posse. So, naturally, Poseidon sent a sea monster to devour their kingdom. The solution? Chain their daughter to a rock and hope the monster gets full. Yeah, parenting in ancient times was tough love with a side of doom. Perseus doesn't hesitate. He drops anchor, or the raft equivalent, and dives into the surf, sword already in hand. You scramble to keep up, because hello? Giant sea monster inbound. It's got tentacles like ship masts, eyes like shipwrecks, and a roar that feels like it's trying to rattle the gods awake. Here's a mainstream history fact to drop into the foam. Ancient storytellers called this beast the Ketos, a catch-all term for sea monsters. It's the same root where we get the word cetacean, as in whales. Which makes you wonder, did ancient Greeks just think whales were eldritch horrors with a PR problem? The fight is, how do we put this delicately, not chill? The monster swipes at Perseus, and he ducks underwater, slicing through barnacle-encrusted flesh like a sushi chef possessed. Meanwhile, Andromeda shouts something. Maybe encouragement, maybe hurry up before it gets to dessert. Just when it looks like the beast might swallow the whole raft, you included, Perseus does something that even you didn't see coming. He opens the satchel. Yep, that's satchel. And just like that, Medusa's head turns the sea monster into a permanent reef. A few dolphins high-five in the distance. Somewhere, Poseidon groans and marks another L on his trident-shaped scoreboard. Historians still argue whether Perseus actually used Medusa's head here, or if later versions of the story just added it for flair. Some even suggest Andromeda slayed the beast herself, and the tale got gender-flipped later to fit the hero saves girl model. Either way, the monster's done, the rock is empty, and Perseus is back on land with a new problem: Andromeda's parents. See, here's the quirky twist. Andromeda was already promised to someone else. A local prince. Not a fan of surprise weddings. But Perseus? He's not just a guy with a sword anymore. He's a full-blown celebrity. Word spreads faster than wildfire, and by the time you reach the palace, he's got crowds throwing petals and bards scribbling ballads. King Cepheus is torn. On one hand, Perseus did save his daughter and kingdom. On the other, breaking a betrothal contract could mean political backlash. Andromeda stands between them, quiet, watching the men talk about her future like she's a prized amphora. You want to say something, but you don't. Because this is mythology, and sometimes the winds of fate leave very little room for modern perspectives. Still, Andromeda's eyes meet yours, and for a moment, you see something steely in her. She's not just another damsel. She's someone who's learned how to survive cliffs and gods and arrange futures. The wedding happens that night, not with fireworks or hymns, but with a strange, hushed ceremony. There's a feast, grapes, figs, honey, roasted birds. No one mentions the monster. No one mentions the chain marks on Andromeda's wrists. Later, when you finally find a quiet spot outside the palace, you lie on the stone terrace, stars overhead like mythological confetti. You wonder what this story really is. A tale of rescue? A tale of sacrifice? Or just a God-spun yarn about people caught in the web of divine egos? Beside you, Perseus laughs softly with Andromeda. Not like a hero, just like a guy who's finally sitting still. And you? You keep listening. Because the sea's never silent for long. Section 10. You're not asleep long when the shadows start whispering again. It's the kind of whisper that creeps in through stone walls and finds its way into your dreams, then yanks you up like a cold splash to the face. 1 minute, you're curled up beside a half-finished goblet of fig wine, and the next, you're ducking a thrown javelin in the palace courtyard. Yeah, so much for honeymoon peace. Turns out, the spurned fiancé, not just some lovesick noble. He's a war-hardened prince with a small army and an ego the size of Mount Olympus. His name's Phineas, and he doesn't knock. He storms in during the wedding feast with a sword in one hand and betrayal sizzling in his voice. Andromeda is mid-toast when the palace doors blast open. You blink twice, and suddenly the hall is chaos. Spears clatter. Guests scatter. Someone flips the roasted boar table, and it lands like a tragedy in 3 acts. Phineas isn't here for negotiations. He's here to kill Perseus. This would be a good time to remember that Perseus, while a seasoned monster slayer, is also kind of running low on backup. No Athena's shield. No Hermes sandals. Just you, a vaguely ceremonial dagger, and one last card up your sleeve. The satchel. Oh, but it's risky. The last time you used Medusa's head, it was to turn a sea monster into a reef. This time, a palace full of people, some of whom probably just wanted wine and a show. Perseus shouts something to Andromeda, maybe get down, or trust me. And then he's sprinting toward Phineas, who's already flinging insults about stolen brides and cowardly heroes. Here's your mainstream historical nugget. In many versions of the myth, the banquet battle is described as an all-out bloodbath. Ancient Greeks loved a good dining room showdown, and the idea of vengeance crashing a party was both tragic and entertaining. Kind of like the original Red Wedding, but with more marble columns and fewer wolves. Perseus tries to fight clean at first. He parries, he dodges, he even knocks Phineas's sword away once. But for every soldier he disarms, another rushes in. It's not a duel, it's a dogpile. And soon, it's clear, this isn't a fight he can win the traditional way. So you nod. You don't even need to speak. He just knows. He pulls the satchel from under his cloak and whips it open like a magician revealing a trick. Medusa's head stares out, silent, seething, eternal. And one by one, the warriors freeze mid-swing. Not figuratively. Literally. Limbs lock, faces twist in horror, and then, stone. Whole columns of marble men, locked in battle forever. The hall goes quiet, except for the clink of armor falling on polished floor. Phineas is the last to turn. There's a moment, just before the stone takes his eyes, when he almost looks like he understands. That he lost not just a woman, but the story, the myth. Historians still argue whether Perseus should have used the head again at all. Some versions say it was excessive overkill. Others suggest he had no choice. One fringe theory even claims the head developed a will of its own by now, choosing who to punish. A haunted relic with its own agenda. You close the satchel, gently, respectfully. No one speaks for a while. Even the survivors, those who manage to look away in time, walk the halls like ghosts, unsure whether to be grateful or horrified. Andromeda stands by Perseus's side, hand in his, but her eyes linger on the statue of Phineas longer than you'd expect. It's not love. It's not regret. It's something messier. A mix of memory and obligation and the quiet guilt of surviving. After the battle, the 3 of you ride out at dawn. No farewells. No statues raised in your honor. Just morning mist, wet with possibility and failure. You're heading west now, toward Tiryns, the ancient stronghold ruled by King Megapenthes. It's not exactly a vacation spot, but it's a place where heroes sometimes go to disappear, to turn from legend back into men. And let's be honest, after all this, you could use some anonymity. Along the journey, you pass shepherds who bow without asking your names. You hear whispers at roadside shrines about the man who tamed the Gorgon and bested Poseidon's wrath. Your reputation is moving faster than your feet. Andromeda rides silently beside Perseus. She's traded her jeweled gown for a traveler's cloak, but she still carries herself like a queen. At night, by the fire, she tells stories, not of chains and sea monsters, but of the stars. She says her mother once claimed she was descended from the heavens, that her name would someday be written across the sky. You laugh, soft, careful laughter. But she doesn't. She's serious. And as you stare up that night, tracing patterns between constellations, you realize something peculiar. There's a cluster, northeast of Pegasus, just above the great sea dragon, that almost resembles a woman in chains. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the gods, in their twisted way, felt a shred of remorse and decided to leave her there. Eternal, unblinking, untouchable. A hero immortalized in stars. Section 11. Your feet are sore, your cloak still smells faintly of smoke from that last campfire, and Perseus is unusually quiet this morning. Not brooding, exactly, more like thinking in capitals. You know that look. It's the look of someone who just crossed the threshold from hero to legend and hasn't quite unpacked the emotional baggage yet. The road west cuts through rugged terrain, where the hills roll like lazy shoulders under a gray sky. The horses clip-clop past olive groves and half-buried ruins, some of them older than the myths themselves. Every once in a while, you spot a toppled pillar with names you've never heard carved deep into the stone. It's like walking through a museum where the curators forgot to lock up. Eventually, Tiryns appears ahead of you, not gleaming or grand, but squat and serious, like a fortress that doesn't have time for your nonsense. Thick limestone walls, slits for windows, a place built for siege, not song. King Megapenthes is waiting, Perseus's cousin, son of Proetus, which means your arrival is less of a royal welcome and more of a tense family dinner with generations of grudges bubbling under the surface. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Tiryns is one of the oldest Mycenaean strongholds, with cyclopean walls so massive that ancient Greeks claimed they were built by one-eyed giants. Archaeologists later confirmed that the masonry was so advanced for its time, it seemed borderline impossible. But sure, blame the Cyclopes. Classic myth workaround. Megapenthes doesn't hug, doesn't bow, just squints down at Perseus from his basalt throne and says, "So, you killed a Gorgon." There's no warmth in it, but no outright disdain either. It's more like he's assessing a chess piece he didn't expect to see in play. Perseus nods, tight-lipped. You step forward and mention Andromeda before things get awkward, offering her name like a diplomatic token. To her credit, she's poised, back straight, chin up, eyes cool as temple marble. Queens don't flinch, even in strange courts. Megapenthes lets you in, offers rooms, food, even a perfunctory nod of respect. But he doesn't like heroes, especially not the kind who bring God's drama trailing behind them like storm clouds. The next few days pass in a blur of gray stone corridors and stilted meals. You sleep light. The palace air feels thick with something. History, maybe, or just unresolved family trauma. You notice guards watching the trio of you with that glazed, "Please don't summon a sea monster in the atrium" look. Andromeda keeps mostly to herself, wandering the battlements and gardens. Perseus, meanwhile, starts carving strange symbols into a slab of wood, like runes or diagrams. You ask once what it's for, and he just mutters something about loopholes. You don't ask again. One night, over wine that tastes slightly of ash and suspicion, Megapenthes brings up the oracle at Dodona. She's been murmuring again, he says casually, as if discussing weather. Something about golden storms. Bloodlines. A box no one should open. You almost choke on your drink. Because you know that riddle. You've lived it, breathed it, dodged it. Historians still argue, Megapenthes continues, whether prophecies are warnings or invitations. There it is, that scholarly debate sneaking into casual dinner conversation like a snake in the figs. You realize something in that moment. Megapenthes isn't just tolerating you. He's testing you, feeling out whether Perseus is still bound to fate, or if he's about to trigger the next catastrophe. These ancient kings, they're like weathered chess players, always thinking 2 disasters ahead. And right now, you're the wild card. You consider asking Perseus about his mother again, Danaë, the woman of gold and shadow and silence. But every time her name comes up, he goes stiff around the shoulders. Like her memory is a puzzle he's still afraid to solve. Instead, you visit the palace archives. Scrolls sealed in beeswax. Tablets etched in crude linear B. You're no scholar, but you find bits and pieces, hints that Danaë may have passed through Tiryns once, disguised as a handmaiden. Maybe hiding from Argos. Maybe not alone. Fringe tidbit of the night. One cracked tablet refers to the Golden Child, not as a mythic hero, but as a plague. A beauty born of betrayal. To shine is to scorch. Spooky stuff. You stash the tablet before anyone else sees. Because a part of you, the part that's grown louder over the past few nights, wonders if this story isn't really about Perseus at all. Maybe it's about what happens after the hero wins. About the ripples from the pebble tossed in golden light. The next morning, you wake to trumpets. Not the fancy kind, the emergency kind. You race to the outer wall just in time to see what everyone else is already gawking at. A messenger, shaking, bloodied, eyes wide with terror. Argos is under siege. A great fire is tearing through the city, starting from the old temple district. The skies are choked with smoke. The palace? Gone. The people? Fleeing. The cause? A storm. Not of rain. Of gold. You look at Perseus. He looks at you. Andromeda joins you on the rampart, her face pale, her voice quiet. Your grandfather, she whispers. Acrisius was still there. Something deep in your bones goes cold. The prophecy never said how or when, only that he would die by your hand. Maybe you didn't need to throw the javelin. Maybe fate just needed you to exist. Maybe, just maybe, Zeus always finishes what he starts. Section 12. The smoke rolls across the sky like ink spilled on parchment, each curl and twist telling its own unholy tale. You squint into the east, where Argos once stood proud, imagining the marble columns buckling like wax in a forge. The storm isn't just golden. It's furious, like a tantrum thrown by a deity who's tired of being subtle. You barely have time to process before Megapenthes orders a war council. You and Perseus are swept into the chamber like chess pieces mid-game, the walls echoing with the clamor of advisors speaking in tongues of panic and prophecy. Their robes rustle like dry leaves, their eyes dart like prey. They say Zeus descended in light, one elder mutters. More like wrath, another corrects. Light doesn't level cities. You sit beside Perseus. He hasn't spoken in hours. Just keeps his hands clenched in his lap, nails carving crescents into his palms. You want to ask what he's thinking, but deep down, you already know. He thinks he killed his grandfather. Not with a blade or a stone, but with existence. With legacy. With the golden blood running like a river through his veins. Mainstream historical fact for you. The real city of Argos has layers of destruction in its archaeological record. Fires. Rebuildings. One particular layer, carbon dated to the Bronze Age collapse, contains scorched temple remnants and strange gold flecks embedded in the ruins. Some scholars say it was ritual, others say lightning. A few whisper divine tantrum. No one mentions liquid god form. Meanwhile, Megapenthes is doing damage control the only way kings know how. Alliances, sacrifices, messages to oracles. You volunteer to deliver one to Dodona yourself, partly out of duty, partly to escape the thickening tension in the palace. It's a long, silent ride into the hills. You pass shepherds who refuse to look at you. Olive trees scorched down to their stumps. Birds flying in the wrong direction, against the wind, as if confused by the world's sudden tilt. When you reach Dodona, The oracle's grove is not the serene sanctuary you remember. The oaks are restless. The wind talks back. The priestess, blindfolded, painted in copper, greets you not with words, but with laughter. Low and guttural. You seek what cannot be unsought, she says. I seek understanding, you reply, already exhausted. She leads you to the sacred tree, its bark carved with names you recognize. Danaë, Perseus, Acrisius, even Zeus. But there's another one, new and unfamiliar. Chrysogenes. It means born of gold. The priestess whispers in your ear, her breath hot and acrid. He was never just a man. He is echo and consequence. Zeus planted more than seed that night. He planted a key. You step back. A key to what? But she doesn't answer. Only offers a bowl of oil. Inside it floats a single golden feather. Not metal. Not dyed. Molten. Fringe tidbit of the day. In ancient Greece, golden feathers were a symbol not of flight, but of transformation. Some mystery cults believed they were signs of divine infection. That if you ever found one, it meant a god had bled too close to you. You carry the bowl back to Tyrann's in silence, trying not to breathe too deeply. Back at the palace, the mood has curdled. Refugees from Argos are arriving by the cartload, smoke-streaked and wide-eyed. Children speak of a voice in the sky, of lightning that laughed, of a face, briefly visible in the golden downpour, etched into the clouds. It looked like Perseus, they say, but older, angry. You meet Andromeda in the garden that evening. She's been unraveling the threads of her wedding veil, knotting them into tiny white spiders. It's a nervous habit, and oddly poetic. We should leave, she says softly. This place is too full of futures. You want to agree. But Perseus isn't ready. He's been carving again. Symbols more frantic now, intersecting lines and spirals. You realize he's not trying to build anything anymore. He's trying to trap something, to contain it, or delay it. That night, you wake to shouting. Perseus is in the courtyard, sword drawn, slashing at a beam of light. It's not real, at least not in the conventional sense. It pulses, flickers, dances like a mirage, taunting him with its untouchable brilliance. You call his name. He turns, and for a second, his eyes aren't his. They glow, faintly, like embers behind wet glass. Then he blinks, drops the sword, and crumples to the marble like a puppet with its strings cut. Did you see him? He gasps. He's wearing my skin. You carry him inside, heart pounding. Later, Andromeda bandages his hand. You try to offer comfort, but what comes out is something colder, something truer. You might not be cursed, you say, but you're a doorway. The next morning, Perseus is gone. No note, no gear, just the bowl with the feather, now black and crumbling, and a single word carved into the table, Naxos. You stare at it, pulse rising, because Naxos is no ordinary island. It's where gods go when they want to remember how to be mortal again, or where mortals go to forget they were ever touched by gods. Section 13. You set out at dawn, following the faintest trail Perseus left behind. No guards, no entourage, just a note carved in ash and a name that tastes like salt and citrus on your tongue, Naxos. The Aegean breeze slaps you awake faster than any strategy session ever did. You hire a merchant ship. The captain doesn't ask questions. His eyes linger on the feather-shaped burn mark on your forearm, still warm from the bowl. People can smell divinity now. It's like sulfur or spilled wine. The voyage is silent, except for gulls shrieking over the rigging and the occasional splash of dolphins shadowing the boat, as if curious who dares chase a half-god across the foam. The captain says dolphins have always followed the bloodline of Zeus. They get chatty when prophecies nearby, he mutters, tightening a rope with more force than necessary. You dock at Naxos under twilight. The island feels wrong. Not dangerous, just skewed. The waves break out of rhythm. The wind seems to double back. Trees bend slightly east when the breeze is west. and everything smells faintly of honey and burning rope. You walk into the village. Mainstream historical fact for the night. Naxos was once home to the sanctuary of Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and rebirth. Archaeologists have uncovered ceremonial altars wrapped in ivy, amphorae sealed with human hair, and temple steps worn into spirals, like pilgrims kept walking until they forgot what feet were for. But you're not here for Dionysus. Not directly. You find the old woman at the edge of the cypress grove. She doesn't look surprised to see you. He came 3 nights ago, she rasps. Asked for the cave? I told him it wasn't a place. He went anyway. You blink. The cave. Not made of stone, she says. Made of memory. Of blood. Of the echo of first betrayal. She hands you a branch of rosemary. Not for protection, just for scent. To hide your fear. You walk into the grove. It's darker than it should be, and quiet in a way that hums. At the center is a circle of stones. Not natural ones, carved, stacked, and scorched. You recognize them from stories Perseus used to tell. Places where Zeus wept gold into the ground and made earth remember him. Where lightning sleeps with its eyes open. You kneel beside the altar. It's sticky, not with blood, with something brighter. Amber? No. Sap. Tree blood. A symbol of preservation. Or entrapment. Fringe tidbit. In several pre-Hellenic cults, sap was used to imprison fragments of divine essence. They believed gods were like bees, powerful, chaotic, and in need of smoking out. In one myth, Zeus's laughter was bottled in amber and buried beneath Naxos. The one who found it would go mad or become king. Or both. You light the rosemary. The smoke coils into a familiar shape. A man. Perseus. He's sitting in the middle of the grove, hands on his knees, eyes closed. The light around him flickers like it's unsure of its source. You step closer. His voice drips out, soft and threadbare. He offered me release. You freeze. Zeus. Perseus nods. Barely. Said I didn't have to fight it anymore. That I could let go. Become what I was made to be. You kneel in front of him. And what's that? His lips twitch. A doorway. A mirror. A second chance. You remember the oracle's words. He wasn't just born. He was planted. Did you say yes? You whisper. Perseus opens his eyes. They are full of gold. Not just glowing, liquid. Swirling. Alive. You stumble back. I said no, he murmurs. But I think he heard yes. Behind you, the trees groan. The air thickens, syrupy and buzzing. The island itself seems to lean in. And then you see it. A crack. Not in the earth, in the sky. Thin, shimmering, golden. Like someone drew a blade across the fabric of reality. From it pours a sound. Not quite music. Not quite thunder. Something ancient and very lonely. Help me, Perseus says. His voice is small. Human. You grab his shoulders. Tell me how. But his body is already stiffening. The golden storm is inside him now, leaking from his pores, coiling around his limbs like affectionate snakes. You press your forehead to his. You are not him, you whisper. You are not Zeus. A pause. A breath. A ripple. Perseus shudders. The light dims slightly, but not for long. A voice, not his, comes from his mouth. I am what follows kings. I am the consequence of prophecy. I am golden because I burn everything I touch. And then he collapses. The light vanishes. The crack seals. You're left holding a boy who looks like a god and breathes like a mortal. But for how long? That night, you don't sleep. You just sit by the shore while the waves write secret messages in foam. Historians still argue whether Naxos was a true cult center or just a poetic afterthought. Some say it's the birthplace of divine madness. Others say it's where gods go to die. You know now, it's where gods go to forget. And maybe where humans go to remember. Section 14. Perseus doesn't wake the next morning. Not fully. He breathes. His eyes flutter now and then. And he murmurs broken syllables like honey, iron, and echo. But there's no clarity, no recognition in his gaze when you whisper his name. You carry him back to the dock, arms trembling, not from his weight, but from the heat radiating off his skin. He's not feverish. It's more elemental, like standing near sun-warmed marble or the last ember in a hearth. The captain refuses to take you both back. He sees Perseus's golden veins pulsing under his skin and mutters something about omens, touches a wooden charm hanging from his belt, and casts off without a glance. You don't blame him. You might have done the same. You build a raft. It's laughable, really. You, the one who once argued divine causality with a Spartan philosopher over roasted olives, now hacking together driftwood with palm twine like some storybook castaway. You even name it. Argue less. Because if this thing falls apart in the middle of the sea, you want the gods to know you've given up trying to make sense of anything. You set sail with Perseus lying on a bed of woven reeds, his hands folded over his chest like a sleeping prince. The horizon glows gold, then bruises purple, then disappears entirely into mist. Halfway through your journey, he speaks. Not a dream mumble this time. Clear. Sharp. Do you know what it felt like? You jolt. What? Perseus's eyes remained shut. When the light came in, you pause. Tell me. It didn't ask permission. It slipped behind my thoughts. Pride opened the parts I'd hidden, even from myself. The fear, the ambition, the questions. It didn't burn. It invited. You gripped the side of the raft, nails digging into the wood. And I wanted to say no. I did. But, you whisper. Perseus exhales. It sounded like my mother. Quirky tidbit of the evening. In certain rare Orphic hymns, Zeus is said to speak in the voice of those most loved by his chosen. To a warrior, he sounds like a fallen brother. To a priestess, like a childhood friend. The goal isn't persuasion, it's recognition. You don't resist what already feels familiar. The sea is calm for hours. Then, just after midnight, the water turns solid. Not literally, but something shifts. Waves freeze mid-crest, the stars smear sideways, and your breath comes out in reverse, returning to your lungs like you're inhaling memory. Then he appears. Not on the horizon, not from the sky. Beneath the raft, you see him through the cracks, eyes wide open, grinning like he's in on every secret you've ever tried to bury. A face made of clouds and coin. Zeus. Not human, not monster, just present. And his voice is everywhere. You sought understanding. Now you must choose. You grab Perseus's hand. I'm not choosing anything. He's his own person. Zeus laughs. It sounds like applause in an empty stadium. No one is their own person. Not really. You are patterns, reactions, memory loops. I just amplify the music you're already humming. You bite back a scream. He's not a vessel. Of course he is, Zeus purrs. You all are. The question is, what are you full of? Historians still argue whether the myth of Zeus transforming into a golden shower was ever meant to be literal. Some see it as euphemism, others as divine symbolism. But a few fringe scholars, those usually laughed out of lecture halls, claim it describes a celestial infection, a way the divine replicates not through flesh, but through resonance. Like a song that, once heard, can never be unheard. The water splits. Not like Moses. More like a zipper unfastening from the underworld up. A figure rises from the divide, half light, half flesh, all wrong angles. It reaches for Perseus. You act without thinking. You cut your palm and smear the blood across his chest. Not because you believe in blood magic. Not because you know what you're doing. Because it's the only thing you own. Your history. Your pain. Your humanity. And, for a moment, the sea recoils. Zeus snarls. Not in anger, in confusion. That's not in the script, he mutters. Perseus's body arches. He gasps, golden veins flashing like lightning. Then they dim. Then stillness. You cradle him. Come back. Come back as you. He opens his eyes. This time, they are blue. Deep, stormless blue. And he smiles. Not a god smile. Just a boy smile. You collapse beside him on the raft, both of you laughing, not because anything's funny, but because you're exhausted and terrified and you've never felt more alive. The stars realign. The sea moves forward again. And somewhere in the distance, dolphins start singing. You drift toward the mainland with nothing but salt in your hair and a boy who may have just beaten a god. Or joined one. You don't know yet. But the raft still floats. And that's enough. Section 15. The shore is softer than you remembered. You expected jagged rocks, or at least some angry reeds, maybe a startled fisherman screaming about omens. But no, when the raft finally nudges land, it's onto sand as fine as flour, pale as powdered marble. The kind of beach you only see in travel brochures or those paintings of Elysium that priests used to hang in temple antechambers. Perseus doesn't wake fully, but he stirs. His body is lighter now, less like carrying a man and more like lifting a question mark. You drag him inland, whispering half-lies like, "You're okay," and just a bit more. Mostly for yourself. You find a cave tucked into a hillside, carved not by nature, but by time. Black soot lines the ceiling, as if someone long ago tried to burn memory into stone. You settle him on a bed of dry moss. When the cave exhales cool air across his cheeks, he sighs. Not in pain, not in fear. Just the sound of letting go. That night, you dream of clocks. Not ancient ones. Modern ones. Grandfather clocks, digital watches, countdown timers blinking red. They all tick in different rhythms, but somehow in sync. A cacophony of precision, all pointing toward the same unseen hour. You wake with a word in your mouth, echo. And you remember. Perseus said it on the raft. In his delirium. Honey, iron, echo. It wasn't random. It was a sequence. You lean over him. What did you hear, Perseus? His eyes flutter. Everything. Then nothing. You glance outside. The sun's up. But not fully. The sky's still deciding what color it wants to be. There's a sound. A footstep. You step out of the cave, squinting into the light. A woman approaches. No fanfare. No divine glow. Just a travel-stained cloak, a staff, and a face that could belong to every teacher you ever trusted and every librarian who ever gave you the benefit of the doubt. She smiles. Good. He's still intact. You blink. Who? Mnemosyne, she says. Mother of the Muses. Memory itself. Mainstream historians often reduce Mnemosyne to a mere name. Just another mythological mother figure to populate genealogies. But in earlier Orphic texts, she was more than that. A vault, they claimed. The original recorder. The divine hard drive. She kneels beside Perseus and brushes a thumb along his temple. He's holding on to the wrong version of himself. You hesitate. Can you fix him? No, she replies gently. I can remind him. She touches your forehead. You don't feel anything. No lightning, no epiphany. Just a memory. It's not yours. You're in a forest. You're Perseus. You're 12. You've just thrown a rock into a stream and watched it bounce 5 times. You're proud. Someone claps. You turn, expecting your mother. But it's a man. He's tall, dressed like he doesn't belong in any century, and his eyes glow like sunset through wineglass. You'll do, he says. You'll do nicely. You jolt back into your own mind. Mnemosyne nods. That's when Zeus marked him. You're saying he's been chosen since he was a child? Not chosen, she says. Resonant. Like a tuning fork waiting to be struck. Then what was the golden shower for? You ask bitterly. She tilts her head. A catalyst. A trigger. A divine way of saying, wake up. You stare at Perseus. His chest rises and falls, but slower now. As if the dream he's caught in is sinking roots. Can I pull him out? You can pull with him, she replies. But not alone. Quirky historical tidbit. Some lesser-known inscriptions from the island of Delos reference the twin trials. Tests that gods must pass not once, but twice. First, through mortal interaction. Second, through mortal resistance. The myth implies that divinity doesn't only expand by giving. It tests its worth by being denied. You sit beside Perseus, hand in his. Let's remember, you whisper. His brow furrows. Honey, yes. Honey, you say? The cave with the bees. The oracle with the twisted smile. His hand tightens in yours. Iron, he murmurs. The blade, you confirm. The one we didn't use. He exhales hard. A shiver runs through him. Then, echo. You nod. The voices you heard. They weren't lies. Just not yours. His eyes open. And for the first time in what feels like centuries, he's looking at you, not through you. Hey, he says. Did I lose? You grin. No. You held on. You glance at Mnemosyne. But she's gone. Only her staff remains, stuck upright in the earth, humming softly. A reminder. A key, maybe. Historians still argue whether memory is passive, just a recording, or active, shaping the narrative as it's recalled. In myth, Mnemosyne's presence always signals that the version being remembered is about to matter more than the one that actually happened. You and Perseus leave the cave before sunset. Not because it's dangerous, because you're ready. Section 16. You've seen him as a whisper in the clouds, a hawk overhead, a storm rolling in with jealous thunder. But now, as you pace the shadowed courtyards of Argos, the myth burns hotter, because tonight, Zeus is gold. You don't know what that means yet, but your feet tread the stones that lead to Danaë's tower, and the night hums with something dangerous and divine. The story gets darker here, not with horror, but with ambiguity. Wait, this isn't the festive Zeus of revels and lightning jokes. This is the god who waits, the one who studies every brick in the prison where King Acrisius locked his only daughter, just to defy a prophecy. You've heard it before, how Acrisius feared the oracle's words, that his own grandson would one day kill him. So, instead of marrying Danaë off, he built her a room without doors, a place where the wind couldn't touch her, and neither could any mortal man. And you wonder, with a creeping chill, what kind of father thinks bricks and fear can silence fate? Historians still argue whether Danaë's prison was a real architectural marvel or just poetic exaggeration. Some imagine it a bronze chamber high in the keep. Others say it was underground, sealed with lead and iron. But you, tonight, you see it as both. A gilded tomb for a living girl. She paces there too, above or below you. Timeless, barefoot, lonely. Her hair glints in the oil lamp light. Her arms, folded tightly, are not those of a princess, but of someone holding herself together. She's 17, or maybe 20. She hums to herself to pass time. She carves shapes into the walls, circles, stars, the occasional figure of a bird with a crown. She has never seen a storm, only heard the thunder. She's never kissed anyone, only read about it in scrolls the guards forgot to take. And then, the ceiling whispers. Not words, not thunder, but a sound like falling coins, or soft rain on bronze. Her lamp flickers, and you see it. A beam, no wider than a finger, streaming through a crack that wasn't there yesterday. Light, but not ordinary. This light has weight. It thickens. It pulls. And as you stare, your pulse slowing, you realize, it's him. Zeus. Not in form, not in voice, not even in thunder. He arrives as gold. Actual, rippling gold, falling through stone like sunlight through water. Liquid, molten, and silent. You don't understand the mechanics. How a god can become a shower, a shimmering mist, a divine element with thoughts and hunger. But here, in the hush of Danaë's cell, it no longer matters. Because she's not afraid. She should be, maybe. The myths later will make it sound gentler than it was. Or more terrible. Scholars still debate if Danaë welcomed the presence or was overtaken by it. If Zeus wooed her with whispers or wordlessly entered her life, like rain enters the soil. But here, in the raw quiet, she doesn't scream. She steps forward. Her hands, long trembling from solitude, reach out and feel the air where he falls. Gold dust coats her skin. Not sharp, not hot, just warm. Like memory. There's no lightning bolt, no blaring proclamation, just this intimacy of presence. And still, She does not turn away. Later, you'll hear poets call it seduction. Some will call it assault. Others, miracle. The truth is that something immortal crossed into her world and changed its physics. And somewhere else, Acrisius stirs in his sleep, unknowing. The prophecy he tried to trap is already on its way. But you're not thinking of prophecy now. You're watching as Danaë breathes in the golden mist. Her eyes close. Her body stills, then arches slightly, like a branch learning how to bear fruit. Outside, the guards pace, oblivious. Inside, time bends. And above it all, Zeus watches. Not as a king this time. Not even as a lover. But as potential. That golden shower is more than a trick. It's an act of becoming. Of setting something into motion that no mortal prison can hold back. You hear voices in the mythological margins saying, "It's just a story. She was a symbol. This never happened." But you know better. You've seen the crack in the ceiling. You felt the shift in the air. You've walked alongside a god who becomes whatever it takes to get what he wants. And tonight, what he wanted was a child. Not any child, a demigod. One who will one day slay Medusa. One who will face sea monsters and rescue chained queens. One who will toss the head of a gorgon into the eyes of fate itself. His name will be Perseus. But for now, he is only a golden possibility. And Danaë sleeps, curled under a veil of dusted radiance, her breath rising slow and calm, as if kissed by destiny. Section 17. When dawn breaks over Argos, it does so shyly, soft-footed, like it knows something happened last night that it can't explain. The sky bruises gold, as if blushing. And far below the towers, in the deep silence of a room once thought untouched by man or god, Danaë stirs. You don't hear fanfare. There are no trumpets. But the air around her has shifted. It's as if the walls are listening. She sits up slowly, her back aching in that specific way a woman's does when something has been set in motion deep inside her. Her hands go to her stomach, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with a kind of quiet reverence. A touch that says, "You're not alone now." You, still shadowing the tale, watch as she realizes the golden dust is gone. Every trace of Zeus has vanished from her skin, her clothes, the floor. The beam of light that pierced her ceiling is now just a hairline crack. No one else would notice it. But she does. And she remembers. What does it mean to be chosen by a god? Not in the glow of myth, but in the raw, echoing hours after? Historians still argue if Danaë was believed immediately when she confessed the truth. Some say her pregnancy was met with awe. Others suggest scorn, whispers of madness, or worse, of lies. But before any of that, you see her alone, watching her own hands, breathing differently. She begins to hum again. But this time, not out of loneliness. Out of anticipation. Weeks pass. Time is strange in myth, measured not in minutes, but in symbols. The guards above her joke less. The food is brought silently. She starts drawing again, but now, instead of birds, she draws suns. Circles inside circles. A child with curls. Wings. Swords. She is painting her own future in charcoal dust. It's not long before her belly begins to swell, and that's when everything shifts. You're there when Acrisius is told. A servant whispers it, expecting laughter or at least confusion. But instead, the king grows pale. Paler than when he first heard the oracle's warning. Because to him, this is no miracle. It's the beginning of the end. He storms to the tower. You imagine him. Crown askew, robe flaring like a bad omen, as he climbs the stairs, then the next, until finally he's standing before his daughter for the first time in months. Who was it, he demands. Which man have you let in? Danaë meets his gaze with something new in her eyes. It's not defiance exactly. Not yet. It's clarity. There was no man, she says. Only light. You'd think that would calm him. But it doesn't. It's worse. Because now he knows. If she's lying, it means betrayal. But if she's telling the truth, then it's prophecy. It's fate. And fate is the one opponent no king can control. So he does what desperate men do when the gods begin to meddle in bloodlines. He tries to delete the future. He doesn't kill her. That would be too easy, too obvious. And maybe, just maybe, he still feels the phantom warmth of fatherhood under all that fear. So instead, he decides to erase her and the unborn child in a single sweep. You stand in the salty wind as he orders the construction of a wooden chest. Not a coffin, not exactly, but not a cradle either. The plan is cruel in its elegance. He places Danaë, pregnant and silent, into the box, nails it shut, and casts it into the sea. Yes, the sea. Because that's how Greeks solved unsolvable problems. If land couldn't contain fate, maybe the ocean could. And so, Danaë becomes myth's quietest sailor. No sail, no oar, just her, the child within her, and the endless rhythm of the Aegean tide. Open scholarly debate. Oh, absolutely. Some ancient sources claim she floated for days before finding land. Others insist divine winds guided her directly to Seriphos, the tiny island where destiny would pick up speed. And some more cynical scholars argue it's all metaphor, an allegory for isolation, for birth through hardship. But tonight, you don't need footnotes. You're there with her, in that dark wooden womb, as the waves lap gently. You hear her breathing through a crack. Her prayers aren't loud, just murmurs to the god who shimmered once in her cell and then vanished. You don't know if he hears her, but the sea does. The stars above spin slowly, as if watching. Fish dart beneath her. The world holds its breath, and the chest floats on. You wonder what kind of god thinks this is enough. If Zeus, from high Olympus, watches his unborn son adrift and shrugs, or if, perhaps, even immortals feel the ache of helplessness sometimes. Either way, nothing stops the water, and the night goes on. Section 18. The sea isn't cruel, not exactly. It just doesn't care. That's the lesson you learn as Danaë's wooden chamber drifts further and further from the Argive coast. The sky rotates slowly above her, sun bleeding into stars, day after day. No rudder, no destination. Just the womb of waves and the faint, rhythmic sound of her child's future kicking inside her. You hover nearby. You hear everything. The wood creaks like an old storyteller whispering things it probably shouldn't say. Danaë speaks back sometimes, mostly to herself, but also to the child. She names him before she sees him. She tells him stories of stars, of light beams, of birds made of gold. And when she sleeps, you can feel the box rock her gently, as if Poseidon himself is cradling it in one weathered hand. No storms, no reefs, just drifting, until the water around her changes. It smells different. The salt gets milder, and you spot a tiny blot on the horizon, a dark smudge that slowly sharpens into cliffs, stones, and finally the island of Seriphos. Seriphos isn't grand. It's not Athens. It doesn't have temples that scrape the sky or priests in gold-threaded robes. But what it does have is a shore. And on that shore stands a man who changes everything. Dictys, a fisherman. Nothing more. No magic, no spear, no shining armor. Just rough hands, a beard like forgotten driftwood, and the kind of quiet heart that gods tend to overlook. But tonight, he becomes myth's most unexpected hero. He sees the chest before it touches the beach. His first instinct is probably curiosity. What washed up this time? A broken mast? A dead gull? But then he hears something. Movement. A cough. A woman. When he pries open the top, you're right there with him as sunlight hits Danaë's face again. And in that split second, you both see what kind of world this is. She looks like a drowned goddess. Her hair is wet, clinging to her cheeks. Her eyes don't flinch, and curled around her belly, under a scrap of torn robe, is the tiniest sign of movement, life. The son of Zeus, not yet born, but very much real. Dictys doesn't scream, doesn't run. He just lifts her out slowly, the way you'd lift a fallen bird, and carries her toward the village, where no one asks too many questions. Because Seriphos is small, and in small places, you learn to mind your own prophecies. Historians still debate what Dictys knew and when. Some say he guessed the child was divine. Others argue he just saw a woman in need. But what matters is this: he gives her shelter. He builds a life around her. And when the time comes, he's the one who brings water, towels, and patience as she delivers her child. Your child now, too, in a way, because you've followed him this far. Perseus. The name rolls like thunder before a storm. Born in a hut with no walls. His first breath stolen from sea wind. No cradle, just driftwood lined with cloth. No nursemaid, just a fisherman with calloused palms and soft eyes. And Danaë? She looks down at him as if she's known him forever. Because maybe, in a way, she has. Zeus never appears again. No flash of gold, no divine visit. Just silence. It's the most fatherly thing he could have done. But Seriphos hums with something new. The island knows something has shifted. You feel it, like the air before lightning. Even the goats stop chewing long enough to look up when Danaë walks by with the infant. Of course, no story gets to rest. Dictys has a brother, Polydectes. Now if Dictys is a sea-worn shepherd of kindness, Polydectes is the opposite. A king in name only. Greedy. Sharp-tongued. The kind of man who counts his coins by licking his fingers first. He sees Danaë and doesn't care about the prophecy or the child. All he sees is a woman who glows even in sackcloth. And that kind of glow? It makes dangerous men want things. He offers her comfort, shelter, titles. She refuses, politely at first. So he begins to wait. He bides his time like a spider pretending to sleep. Meanwhile, Perseus grows. Not like other children. Faster, sharper, quieter. His first word is sky. His second is blade. You watch as he runs barefoot across sand, a driftwood sword clutched in one hand. Danaë chasing him with a laugh that hasn't echoed since Argos. You see Dictys teach him how to cast nets, how to read waves. And you watch as Polydectes lurks in the background, taking notes. He knows he can't touch Danaë while the boy is near. So he plots. He waits for Perseus to become old enough to be useful. And that day is coming. Soon. Very soon. Section 19. Polydectes isn't patient by nature. He likes things swift, conquests, commands, decisions. But when it comes to Danaë, he waits. Not because he respects her. Let's not give him that much credit. But because he knows he has to. She's protected. Not by guards or magic, but by something more inconvenient. A boy who's quickly becoming a man. Perseus, now a teenager, isn't tall yet, but he's sinewy. The kind of strength that doesn't bulge, it coils. He's spent years chasing fish, climbing cliffs, swinging sticks at shadows, never realizing he's being forged, quietly, like a sword left in the surf. You watch him walk the market with Dictys, who buys olives with one hand and greets every vendor by name. Perseus follows a step behind, silent but attentive. He studies people, not just things. He listens. Danaë watches from a distance, and there's pride in her face, sure. But something else, too, worry. A premonition. She's been in a box on the sea, after all. She knows that calm isn't a promise. And right on cue, Polydectes makes his move. He throws a party. Not a feast. A declaration. Invitations are carved into bark and sent across the island. Men arrive in sandals stiff with peacock feathers, clutching gifts wrapped in linen, horses, silver bowls, rare salts. It's a performative flood of wealth. And the unspoken headline? He wants to marry Danaë. Now, you may be wondering, how does a king propose to a woman who's said no since the day she arrived? Simple. He doesn't ask her directly. He announces it to everyone else. The plan is vile and clever. Embarrass her publicly, then act wounded when she refuses. Then, once she's isolated, turn the people against her. All he needs is one thing: remove the boy. That's where you come in. Because now, Polydectes looks at Perseus and smiles like a butcher eyeing a lamb. "You didn't bring a gift," he says, voice oiled and sweet. "How rude, for a prince of Argos." "I'm no prince," Perseus replies. He's calm, but his knuckles whiten. "But you are her son," Polydectes says. "And she deserves a proper tribute. Say the head of Medusa." And there it is. The room goes still. Someone drops a figure. No one says it out loud, but everyone hears the subtext. He's sending the boy to die. Because Medusa isn't a challenge. She's a death sentence. Snake-haired, stone-eyed, exiled at the edge of the world. One look and you're granite. The last person who tried to slay her is still a garden ornament somewhere near Libya. But Perseus? He nods. Just like that. Historians still argue about this moment. Was he brave? Foolish? Caught in a web of masculine pride? Some claim he saw through Polydectes immediately and accepted just to bide time. Others believe he genuinely thought he could win. But you? You see something else in his eyes. Not bravado. Not idiocy. Just fire. The kind that starts small but refuses to go out. Danaë protests, of course. She begs. But Perseus says the same thing every time. He insulted you. That's all he needs. You're with him that night as he packs. What little there is to pack. No sword. No armor. Just a cloth bag and a sling made of goat hide. You watch as Danaë brushes hair from his forehead and whispers something too soft to catch. Her face is stone, but the kind that holds. And then he walks. Out of the village. Into myth. Here's where things start getting weird. You don't get far before you feel it. The air changes. Colors deepen. Sounds stretch. It's like stepping from stage into dream. And then she appears. Athena. Not the owl-perched, statue-faced goddess of scrolls and laws. This Athena is sharper. Younger. Tactical. She appears not in glory, but in silence, right beside Perseus on the trail. No lightning. No fanfare. Just a cool voice. Turn back, and you live. Walk forward, and you owe me everything. He walks. She approves. Next comes Hermes, silver-winged and half-smirking. If Athena is strategy, Hermes is chaos in boots. He flips a coin midair and says, "Heads, you win. Tails, you don't." It lands on its edge. He cackles. Together, they lead him toward tools hidden from mortal hands. A curved blade, so sharp it whispers through shadows. A mirrored shield, polished so fine it shows not your face, but your fears. And sandals. Yes, the flying ones, which Hermes slips onto Perseus's feet with a wink. "Oh, and one more thing," Hermes says, reaching into nothing and pulling out a helmet. It hums like darkness. "This'll make you invisible, for when you'd rather sneak than shine." 3 gods. 3 gifts. Even the fates are rattled. Because now Perseus isn't just a boy on a suicide mission. He's a boy equipped. But no one gives him a map. Because getting to Medusa? That's the true labyrinth. It starts with a descent to the gray lands where the greedy live. 3 ancient sisters. One eye between them. They smell like forgotten vinegar and dust. And they do not want visitors. You follow Perseus as he approaches their cave, silent as moonlight, and waits for the moment they pass the eye. One grabs, the other fumbles, bam. He snatches at midair. They screech. "Tell me where Medusa is," he says. "Or this eye becomes ocean glass." His curse is older than language. But they tell him. Because even monsters know when a story is moving too fast to fight. And just like that, he's off again. Over desert. Over salt. Over shadow. Toward the end of this section. But not the end of the story. Because Medusa is waiting. And not even she knows what's coming. Section 20. The sky shifts as you get closer. Not in color. Still that same bruised blue, but in weight. The air itself grows slower, like each molecule has been told to hush. And the birds? Gone. Not silent, gone. No wings, no song. Just absence, hanging heavy. Perseus lands on a crag of black stone. The sandals have carried him across oceans, but now he walks. He has to. Because this is where Medusa sleeps. not in a castle, not in a cave marked, "Here be monsters." She lives in ruins, a temple so collapsed even the gods have forgotten its name. Vines crawl up marble like veins on a dying limb. Statues dot the garden path, all in mid-motion, kneeling, gasping, reaching. Not sculpted, frozen. You know why? One look. That's all it takes. Which is why Perseus doesn't look. He pulls the polished shield from his pack and holds it like a window, not to see forward, but to see without seeing. The surface wavers with each breath, but it reflects enough. You can almost hear the snakes before you see them. Medusa doesn't roar. She doesn't scream. Her hiss is soft, almost sad, like a lullaby twisted at the edges. She moves like someone tired of being feared, coiled, silent, drifting. You remember the story, right? The temple of Athena, the desecration, the transformation. A woman cursed not because she was cruel, but because the gods couldn't bear to be reminded of their own failure. There's still debate over what really happened. Some say Poseidon attacked her. Others insist she seduced him. But no matter which version you follow, the outcome was the same. Athena made her a monster. Or maybe, just maybe, she made her a warning. Now, you watch Perseus approach the heart of the temple. He's sweating, hands trembling, but his grip holds. The mirrored shield shows a flicker of scales, a jaw, fangs, the slow sway of living serpents. And then her eyes. Not wide, not wild, just aware. She sees him through the shield, and something strange passes over her face. Recognition? Resignation? She lunges. But Perseus is faster. He ducks, rolls, swings. The sickle, curved and God-forged, slices air with a sound like the end of something. And just like that, silence. No scream. No crash. Just the thud of a body not used to falling. He doesn't turn to look. He doesn't have to. He places the head, still crowned with hissing vipers, into a special sack, one lined with shadows. Then he sits. For the first time, he breathes. You'd think that'd be the end, right? Kill the monster. Get the glory. Go home. Except stories don't work that way. Because as Perseus leaves the temple, the sky changes again, not in color, but in consequence. The air smells of salt and shift. The gods, it seems, aren't done with him yet. He flies. Not toward Seriphos. Not yet. First, Ethiopia. You land beside him on the shores of chaos, where a king named Cepheus is watching his daughter die. Andromeda, chained to a rock, hair whipping in the wind like prophecy. She's a sacrifice, to a sea monster, of course. Because her mother insulted a god, and who pays the price? The girl. Some things don't change. Perseus doesn't hesitate. He soars into the sky, rips the sack open mid-flight, and lets Medusa's head face the beast. Stone. Just like that. He cuts Andromeda's chains before they can even thank him. They fall in love, you assume. Fast and bright and doomed, as these things often are. Some say they married and ruled for years. Others say she died young. Historians argue, as usual. But you? You remember the flight home. Because now Perseus carries not just a head, but a weight. He knows what power costs. When he lands in Seriphos, the air is thick with tension. Polydectes is waiting. He didn't think the boy would return. His court laughs nervously when Perseus walks in, dusty and quiet. "I brought your gift," he says. He doesn't shout, doesn't draw it out. He opens the sack. The head doesn't scream. It doesn't glow. It just looks. And in an instant, Polydectes and all his court are silent. Forever. Statues, every last one. You think Perseus might smile. But he doesn't. He turns to Danaë, who hasn't aged a day in his eyes. She wraps her arms around him and whispers, "I knew you would come back." They leave the island. No throne, no crown, just peace. And Medusa? They say he gave the head to Athena, who mounted it on her shield. A forever warning. Of beauty turned deadly. Of gods who punish women for surviving. Of a boy who was never just a boy. The story could end here. But before you drift off, Here's one final image, a quiet island. Waves like whispers, a sword buried in sand. And in the sky above, just for a moment, the faintest shimmer of golden rain. You remember what that meant, don't you? The beginning and the end.